As every parent knows, it's impossible to be a perfect parent or a perfect child. Life is challenging, and as hard as we try to avoid making mistakes in the parenting process, we muck it up sometimes, even when our hearts are in the right place. And today we'll be focusing on this listener's question, which really illuminates a big struggle for so many parents around the world. And here's the question. I've worked so hard to give my kids the loving parenting I didn't get as a child, yet things are out of control. My kids, ages 7, 9, and 11, are disrespectful, they talk back, and I feel helpless and sometimes hopeless. Do you have any suggestions? And with that topic as the focus of today's podcast interview, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manley, and this is Imperfect Love.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Marie Manley, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are not perfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Maggie Stevens, who will be sharing her expertise on how to create healthy parenting step by step. So not complicated, just nice, simple, step-by-step interactions for parents so that they can feel powerful and effective when they're working with their kids. So, Maggie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here with you, Carla. You've got such a great topic, and you know so much about it yourself that I'm thrilled to be here and add anything I can to the podcast.
Oh, I know you will, because you are not just a parent, you're an amazing author and author of The Parenting Fix. So before we launch into that, tell us a little bit about what makes you you.
I didn't realize this when I was in high school or college, but I've figured out I'm a nurturer, whether it's plants in my gardens or my children or my grandchildren or a stray off of the street. I have this bond that I need to help the underdog, help them find their way, help them have confidence and feel good about themselves. And there's nothing more rewarding than seeing that from somebody. And I think it came down through my line. My father was that way. His mother was that way. And so I would love to take full credit for it, but I think it was a gift.
I just love hearing that your father was a major influence, because our brains, I know mine naturally went to, oh, nurturing mom, but you were one of the blessed ones who really had a nurturing father. That's and now, was your mom also a nurturer or just your dad?
My mom was a nurturer, but my dad was probably more of the soft, gentle, which is, I think, kind of unusual sometimes for people and to have that. He a soft, gentle person who he loved mankind. He loved people, and he was good with people, and he was especially good with his children. So we were very fortunate, my siblings and I, to have him as a dad.
How many siblings?
I have 3 siblings, 2 sisters and 1 brother.
Okay, 2. Okay. So family of 6. 4 kids, mom and dad, and it sounds like a beautiful childhood. So with today's question, it's, so many parents feel like they don't have the space to create this beautiful, nurturing childhood. And I do, before we get into that, this is so off topic, but I can't help it. I can't help it, but I don't want to. So it's off topic. So many of us feel, if we have that really nurturing energy that I do, that you do, that there's something wrong with that in today's world, that being a nurturer somehow means you're going to be a doormat and people are going to take advantage of you and trot on you, and that you're naturally going to be a people pleaser. What would you say about that?
I think actually, to be a nurturer, you're also a protector. And I guess we could be doormats, but when I'm sure you're like this too, Carla, when we see somebody being hurt by another person, I have no problem stepping in and stopping what I see happening. So I don't feel that way. I feel strong, I feel empowered, and I also feel humble, which I think are three of the traits you need to be a nurturer. You're not weak just because you're loving. You're
Okay.
strong and you actually have more power being this way. I think you get more done and can affect more people than someone who has a dominant bullying type of personality.
Hey, you brought tears to the corners of my eyes and tears to my heart. And because I've never heard someone put it that way, that I'm a nurturer, and to be a nurturer, you also have to be a protector. And absolutely, it makes perfect sense when you illuminate it that way. That, of course, for those of us who grew up with maybe parents who were overly strict or who were dismissive or not nurturing, or there wasn't balance. So it makes sense that if you had the joy of growing up with parents who were protective in the right ways and nurturing in really healthy ways, then that makes you a very boundaried nurturer. What I would call a boundaried nurturer, new term there, a
I love
boundaried
that.
nurturer. Yeah, that's a good one. Let's coin it, boundaried nurturer. And so we have this boundaried nurturer who, as you says, and I'm going to repeat that, who is strong, empowered, and humble. So you have this nurturing energy, but you also have strength, humility, and you're empowered. What a beautiful. So I'm glad I got off on that tangent, because I think so many women and men will welcome this message that parents of whatever gender, it's not only okay to be a nurturer, no, regardless of your gender, but yeah, let's embrace the nurturing energy. And let's also add a huge dose of, balanced protection to that. And you're making me think of my first book, Joy from Fear, where I was advised not to go into masculine energy and feminine energy, but instead to talk about it in different terminology. So I came up with the nurturer, the nurturing energy, and
Oh,
so nurture and power energy. And I'm now thinking of how applicable that is here, and that we as women, we don't want to be just nurturers. We want that balance of power. And no matter, whether you're male or, you identify in some other way, that it's absolutely important, regardless of gender, to have the nurturing energy and the powering energy in balance, because they both have a big role in being human and certainly in being a parent.
oh, that's so true. And I think as women, sometimes we think of ourselves as weak or feel like people look at us as weak. And one of the things I've learned from being a mother and a grandmother and writing the book and doing lectures is that as women, we are strong. We are a very strong and powerful people. And we have to remember that and, keep our strength in check so that we don't come across as mean or tough. There's no need for that. We can still have our gentleness, our love, that endearing part of women, but never ever think that that is a lesser power or a weakness, because it is strength. And yeah, I think you have to be careful with that as a woman, that we are powerful. We are not the weaker sex, but we have such an addition to it by adding our love, our empathy, those things that I think lots of women, not that men don't have it, but lots of women come by it so naturally.
And I love that. I love everything you were saying. And I also love the nod, going back to your dad, that it's not exclusively for women, that we all have these qualities we can choose to nurture if we want and bring forward. So I have a question for you, and I'm so glad that we have this bit of background because it's so rich. So if we go to the question of the day, where it sounds like we've segued into it perfectly. Here's this mom feeling, I don't know if she's partnered or not, but she's feeling lost. She's feeling as though she was trying so hard to give her kids the love that she apparently didn't feel as a child. And now these kids are, running amok and they don't respect her. And you're smiling, which is so lovely because I can feel her pain. And then I see your joy and like, okay, we do have a good answer for this. So yeah, please, please let me know if you were her therapist, being an expert in this, and again, author of The Parent Fix. How would you coach her to come forward with, sounds like she might have the nurturing down pat, but maybe not the empowerment, maybe not the boundaries. What do you think?
I smile because I just had this conversation with my daughter about she and her children just yesterday.
Ah.
So that's why I smile. And it's easy to smile when you're through that stage in life, and not that you've conquered it, but you get it. And sometimes it's more difficult than we realize going into being a parent. I say simplify, love. That's all you have to do. And then you do that, and your children respond in the way that you go, wait a minute, this isn't what I was asking for. I'm doing my best here. And they're not responding the way that the book says they will, or the way that I feel that they should. And it is a very simple answer. And it's with each individual child. And you have to look at the child, look at their behavior, and then ask yourself, why would the child be acting like this? What is causing my child to maybe treat me with disrespect, or tease their younger sister? Or maybe it's worse. Maybe they're, what would a child do that's really bad? Stealing the car. Maybe they're doing things that are just not happy behavior or good behavior. And it's time to don't blame yourself. This is not anything you did. Your parenting techniques are correct. If you're loving that child and doing the best you can. Remember one thing, and I'll jump around a little bit, is that you are the best parent for that child. You are their mainstay. And don't ever forget that. Don't ever belittle yourself or feel like you're not doing good enough. That's the number one step. Number two is...
Before you go to number two.
Okay.
Okay. So let's just hope I don't take you off course, because I can feel so many parents, probably me at times, certainly saying, oh, yeah, right. Like I'm the best parent for these kids, well, yeah. They're talking back to me. I must be a bad parent, right? So how does one, and let's take it to this mom, if she's beating herself up and saying, I'm doing it wrong, is it simply a matter of course correcting and saying, wait a second, maybe I need help, maybe I need support, but what I have that my child needs is my gift of love to them. Is that what you mean? Is that the place to go, is to go to, I might need resources, but this is my child and I love them in a way no one else can. Is that the tip? Okay.
Yes, the tip is your love is the very best thing you can give to that child. Your home of having a safe haven, your being of just adoring this child. If you did everything else wrong, that's the number one thing you need to do right. So pat yourself on the back. You've done that. Now, doing that does not mean your children will behave perfectly. It never means that. And it also does not mean that you're doing a bad job as a parent. It just means, if there's a problem, we need to figure out how to fix it. And you're going to learn so much from these children you're raising. Look at it more as a learning lesson and not beating yourself up that you're not doing it right, because none of us know how to do this right. On the first time through, when raising kids, your kids will introduce you to things that you'll think, I didn't ask for this, but okay. You will learn more. So the key, you're right, is don't take it internally, especially with teenagers. Teenagers can make you feel like a terrible mother at some of the things they'll say and do. You're not a terrible mother. You're there for that child, and you will figure out how to make this work. That's okay. Just like a job at work, that there's a problem comes up, you're there to figure it out. You're the adult, you will figure it out. And the key is, and this is what is the main topic today, is do not beat yourself up over it. Just realize I just have to find the solution to the problem. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I love how we can boil it down to, and I'm with you, shame, blame, guilt doesn't do any good. Doesn't do any good. All we want to do is say, hey, there's a problem. I'm trying. I love my kids. Let me not shame, blame, guilt trip myself. Let me just figure out the next best step forward.
And that's why it's good to have other moms with kids around the same age who are friends that you trust, that you can share your child's worst moments with, because they may have gone through that. They may say, oh, honey, that's normal. That's just fine. What they're doing, that my child did that to me. Don't ever feel like you can't, like the shame or hiding. That's the worst thing. Bring it out in the open. Talk to other parents about it. Talk to Carla about it. Contact me, ask questions. That's how you solve the problem. Don't beat yourself up over it. You're solving the problem, and you're okay, and your child's okay. And there is a solution for it.
I'm so with you. And before we move to step two, I just want to say the shame, blame, guilt thing, you are using energy when you're shaming, blaming, guilting yourself. Instead, use that energy to say, I love myself. I love my kids. I want to find the next best step. Use the energy, in a way that's going to get you out of the rut you're in instead of making that rut deeper and deeper. Okay. So, Maggie, what is step two?
Step two is, and I get a lot of flack for this, is lower your expectations when your children are concerned. And then they will exceed those expectations. When your child feels pressure from you to behave a certain way or perform a certain way, it's pressure on them. Let them take that pressure off your shoulders and put it on theirs. Let them come up with what they want to achieve. And don't look at other people's children and think, oh, why aren't my kids like that? Why aren't they doing that? That's one of the number one ways to absolutely make you feel bad about what you're doing as a mom. So
Absolutely. And not only would it make the parent feel horribly, but then the child feels horribly and learns to get into that very toxic comparison cycle. Well, I'm not like Joey, or I'm not like Melinda, or whomever, when absolutely they're not like it. So let's just focus like that other person. So let's just focus on you being your best you.
that's so true. And it gives you confidence as a mom or as a woman to think, okay, I'm unique in this and this way. I'm good at this. Maybe my kids will be good at this. Maybe they won't. But lower your expectations to think we all have to be the same, because none of our families look the same. None of our children look the same. None of us look the same. And that's okay. You just have to be okay with who you are inside, not somebody else's family.
Okay, so I want a little clarification because I can imagine maybe some listeners' minds are going, oh, so that means I should let my child be on the phone whenever they want and just lower my expectations around that. And I should let my child, go out in shorts that are the size of a handkerchief, and I should let my child bully my other child. So I guess that's lowering my expectations. Is that what you mean, Maggie?
No, not one bit. And I thank you for bringing it up, because that's why I get flack so many times from parents for saying, lower your expectations. You have your own beliefs, your own morality system, and what is okay with you. One of the most important things, and one of the things we very rarely do, is sit down and have a family council session with your children. So you can talk about what's bothering you, what's bothering them, what needs to change, why that needs to change, how you're going to change it. Then, as you talk in this family council, whatever you want to call this meeting that you have with your kids once a week, every day, it's up to you to decide. You sit down and discuss what your goals are and why you have them, or what your low expectations are and why you have them. And then you give your children a chance to talk about that. If it were the daughter's dressing, like she walks out of the house in just the most obscene clothing or immodest clothing, you can talk to her about why she shouldn't do that, what that does when a young teenage guy her age sees her looking like that, what he thinks about that. Sometimes as parents, we don't have these discussions with our kids and explain just the most basic common reasons for, we don't stay on our cell phones all day. There's tons of research out about that. And screen time for kids, if you're a mom that's on your phone all the time, of course your kids are going to be on their screens all the time. So think, it's common sense. Think the problems that are going on in your house or the behaviors you want to see change. Now, you have to be careful with these family councils in that you're not spending the entire time belittling your kids or telling your kids everything they're doing wrong. But you can say things like, tell me how you feel about this, because this is how mom feels. And this is why I feel this way.
Okay.
How can we solve this problem? How can we together figure out a way to make this work? It may be, mom needs a little more help around the house. So she makes up with the kids a list of how do you think you could help mom? And then when the child comes up with their own solutions, it's amazing to see how much more involved they're willing to be. How much
I love
more.
this.
Yes, you can get their help instead of you saying, okay, I want this bathroom cleaned. I want it done now. And the child may do it. They do a terrible job. They're angry at mom. It doesn't have to be that way in the house. You can sit down as a family and say, here's what I need. Can you help me? And what can I do to help you? If you have this family council, it solves so many problems of kids talking back, anger, of expectations, of I'm not getting what I want, and so I'm going to take it out on you. So does that make sense?
It makes so much sense, because I'm laughing at myself. When my kids were little, I created chore charts, and they did the chores that I requested, and didn't have a high success rate. And so now I'm quite a bit, I hope quite a bit smarter than that. But anyway, what you're saying is, wait, instead of doing a top-down approach, do the teamwork approach. These family meetings are about, you're still the boss, you're still the parent, but you want to bring the children into the fold so that they can express what their feelings are, what their needs are, what their preferences are. And as you say, and I think there's a lot of research that backs this up, when you give children choices, they come forward in a far more collaborative, positive, energetic way than when they are forced to do something. I think we're all a bit like that. So it's not just children. We like the power of choice. So what you're saying is, hey, mom, if your kids are being disrespectful, maybe start calling. And I don't think it's ever too late, too early or too late to call family meetings, so that children, this isn't the time to chastise kids, it's a time to collaborate with them. And I want your opinion on this piece, because I had read some research about it, that also when it comes to a consequence, like if this parent says, hey, next time, you don't do the chore that you signed up for doing, that you thought was a good chore, what do you think the consequence should be?
Perfect.
And I've heard that the research shows that when the child comes up with their own consequence, it's often as tough, if not tougher, than what the parent would have come up with.
That is so true. That is so true. And then knowing that consequence, it makes them think a lot more before they make a mistake or do something they know will bother their parents. It makes such a difference in the parenting. And you're not just being a friend to these kids, you're still their parent.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes them think about what they're doing. And that's what your whole goal really is in raising your children, is to teach them correct principles so they can govern themselves. So not only does it create a much calmer atmosphere in the home, you're teaching your child.
Absolutely. And it makes perfect sense, because, for our listeners to realize that when a child comes up with something, then they're more likely to be internally motivated, right? So coming from this place of, I want to get a B, or I want to have a clean bedroom, I want to do this, rather than an external motivation, which is mom and dad said I have to do this, and if I don't, I'm going to be, put in time out or restricted or whatever is happening. So that internal motivation, and it sounds like that's what you're saying, is teach the child to be internally motivated. And that's far more lasting as far as a strategy for parents. You get that child hooked in with an internal motivation. Oh my goodness.
And it shows the relationship.
Mm.
It saves you from having to be the heavy that comes down on them all the time. You let them do it to themselves. You don't have to. And
Sounds
one
a
other,
bit.
if you have a child that is talking back to you on a regular basis, listen to their words. I know it's difficult. I think as a mom, you have to almost have a shield that when they say hurtful things, that you let it bounce off and don't. It's more looking at the child thinking something's hurting them, something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Let me figure out what that is. They love you. They do love you. And you just they lash out because they feel safe around you. So I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. And every mom goes through this when the child says something awful to them. It really hurts. But
Right.
just let it bounce off. Remind yourself they love me. I'm the adult here. I'm going to help them work through this.
So if your child is talking disrespectfully and says, I hate you, you're the worst mother ever, and you put up your shield, you let it bounce off you, and then what would the mother say? Could you
I
tell me why you're speaking to me
Yes.
that way?
Or I'm sorry you feel that way. I love you, or you can even be honest and say, ouch, that hurt. That
Mm.
hurt me. Why would you say that? Or, there's a lot of things, but it's usually the child is hurting when they say something like that. And I mean, do listen to why. Maybe there are some things as a mom you are doing that are hurtful to that particular child. That may be some of it. So listen to what they're saying. If it's just mean, hurtful remarks, let them bounce off. Try to show more love towards them afterwards. And this is hard. This is really, I mean, it sounds so easy and so pleasant and so nice. It's not easy. This is not easy, but you will have such better success with that child by not reacting to whatever it is that they're upset over.
Got it. And so, listeners, I hope that that makes sense. That if the child is saying something unkind, horrible, hurtful, you don't have to stand there and take the abuse, right? We're not advocating that. We're simply saying don't internalize it, don't take it on, and get curious about where it's coming from. And that, as Maggie says, it's absolutely okay and appropriate to say, ow, that's hurtful. Why are you doing that? And what would you say, Maggie? I would say that it's okay to say it's not acceptable to talk to me that way. If the child's swearing at you or
Yes.
whatever, that's absolutely healthy to have good boundaries and say, wait a second, this is not okay to talk to me this way. It's hurtful, it's upsetting, and I want to know where it's coming from. Would you please share with me what's going on for you?
That's perfect. And your calming influence, the way you said that, Carla, was so perfect. I can tell you're a therapist. You can talk the way you calmed it right down and brought it back to the child. It kind of disarms them. And if it's very extreme and you need to remove yourself from the room for a few minutes, I think that's better than sending the child to the room. That's just my personal preference. If sometimes I say that hurts, I need to move away for a minute so you can calm yourself down and then be able to do it like Carla just beautifully said it. Where is this coming from? What's hurting you? How can I?
What's going on? And
Yeah.
I love you and I have a similarity here. When I was, and I wouldn't hesitate to do it in today's life as well, but when my kids were little, I would take timeouts. I would
Yes.
say, Mommy needs a timeout right now. Mommy's going to go and have some quiet time. And yeah, I put myself in timeout so that I could chill and I could reset. And so, yes, parents, you get to put yourself in timeout. That's okay, because we don't want to react to our kids. We want to be able to respond to them from a place of balance, yes, and
Yes.
be
True.
curious. Okay, so I know I could talk to you for hours about this. So let's move to the third tip. What's the third strategy?
The third strategy is to remember that you are learning along with your child.
Mm.
This is a process, and nobody can be the perfect parent, just like you cannot be the perfect wife, the perfect woman, the perfect worker, coworker. You are in a learning process, and try not to beat yourself up over not knowing what to do. Some of the advice I give, in fact, most of the advice I give is common sense. It's not difficult to figure out on your own. So constantly tell yourself, I'm learning this. How can I be better? not I'm a bad mom. I think any verbiage you hear yourself in your mind saying over and over, I'm bad at this, I'm not good, try and just wipe that off your list and replace it with, I'm learning.
I'm
I'm
learning.
trying to be a good parent here. I'm doing, and you can say that to your child. I remember watching my teenagers' faces as I said that, because it totally changed the conversation from I'm the one responsible here to I'm learning as a parent here. Help me.
And that really fits with the first principle that we talked about. And this one is to be able to have that lifelong learning attitude, because kids at every developmental stage, they're different. And even if you have 2 or 3 kids, each one of their stages, there might be similarities, but those kids are gonna be different. And then you get through this phase and this phase, and then it's just nonstop. And so that's so important, to be able to embrace that idea that it's an imperfect science at best.
It
It's
is.
really an imperfect science. And as long as we're leading with love, that, we can get a lot right when we lead with love, and hopefully get very little deeply wrong.
That is so true. And that should be the basis of your home. If you can have that safe haven, they know mom will react with love. They know how she's going to react. You'll find out maybe more than you wanted to know about your teen. They'll tell you things, to know. I mean, think about it. When you go talk to a friend or a therapist or a counselor, and they're going to react in your camp, on your side, they're there to help you get through whatever it is you're going through. It creates such deep friendships and such deep bonds that you will be, when your kids have long left your home, you will be friends. They will come to you for advice. Starting it when they're young and going this whole way through the process so that they know what to expect out of you creates deep relationships.
And that makes sense as part of this. Tip 3 ends up being a very big tip. It's about, jumps back a bit to the tip 1 about not being hard on yourself, but then it really comes through with this lifelong learning piece. Reach out for support. And I'm also picking up something very important, which is when we are in the thick of something, we often don't have common sense, because we're getting activated, we are confused, the kids are screaming, things are going wrong. And don't beat yourself up about that, because we've all been there. When we are activated, when we are in the thick of something, we can't see the forest for the trees. And that's when we get to reach out to a therapist, to mom, to sister, to girlfriend, to support group, because what seems obvious maybe in hindsight at the time is so out of reach. It's so out of reach. It doesn't even dawn on us sometimes. And that's what makes us such imperfectly, wonderfully confused human beings.
And I even remember, like you said, everything you said was perfect, although we're not perfect people, right? But what I
Definitely
remember
not.
is sometimes I would be up all night worrying about something with one of my children, or I hadn't done right or said something right. And I'd go out for a walk or a run the next morning, and it was amazing how my head cleared. And I see what needed to be done. Not all the times, but sometimes you just need space in between, and you'll get answers. You'll get a clarity that you think, that's what I needed to do. And it is perfectly okay if you've made a mistake or you've yelled at your child and it hasn't gone well, to go to them and say, I am so sorry. I handled that poorly. Remember, apologies and love make all the difference. And children are so forgiving. They really are. Coming to, yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. And I know we have to wrap up soon, but I am so grateful for this piece that you brought up, because apologies, we are often so hesitant to give apologies, but when we teach our children the language of a true apology from the beginning, that's that piece of humility. It also creates trust. It also creates, from my paradigm, this element of I'm imperfect and I know it, and I'll get it wrong. And when I get it wrong and you call it to my attention, I will apologize with humility, with sincerity. And I will say, and this is the meat, listeners, of the true apology, I'm sorry. This is what I did incorrectly. and this is what I will do in the future, or try very hard in the future to do differently. And what do you need from me right now so that you can feel safe and loved again? And when we handle an apology in that way, we've really come forward. We've allowed ourselves to learn. And then we've given that child, whoever is across from us, the ability to say, oh, that person gets it. They may have hurt me, but the chances of them hurting me in the same way again are really greatly reduced, and they get me. What do you think about that strategy, Maggie?
I think it's beautiful. I really think it's beautiful. We talked about women being humble, and that's the ultimate of humility, is being able to say to someone, I'm sorry, because most oftentimes people don't mean to hurt you, and especially your parent doesn't mean to hurt you. So as a parent, if you go to your child that way, you've not only let them feel your love, but you've taught them how to give that love to others. Pass that on, which we so need in our world today. A little more humility, a little more love, and a lot of apologies, I think.
Yes, and that sense of when I apologize that way, I can feel I'm growing and I'm learning, because I'm going, I get it. I mucked it up here. I could do better here. And so I'm up leveling because I gave a true, solid apology. I'm becoming a better human being. And so whoever I'm with, whether it's a kid or whatever, and then when you realize, once you get into the art of apologies, you realize, wow, this is pretty cool. It doesn't mean I'm a stupid person. It means I'm an imperfect human who has the desire not to hurt others and who is willing to grow to do less hurting and more loving.
You're learning and you're trying to be better. That's what we're all trying to do, is do our best, right? Can't be perfect, but we're trying to do our best.
Well, let's hope we're all trying to do our best. That's the ideal. Oh, Maggie, I could go on for so long. Thank you so, so much for, I didn't even get to half of what I wanted to talk with you about, but there's another time perhaps in the future. So where can our listeners find you?
My book is published by familius.com. So you can go there, FAMILIUS, or I have my own website that is parentfix.com, PARENTFIX.com. And I just came out with a workbook that goes along with the Parent Fix book. And it's so new, we have not gotten it on Amazon yet. So I'm actually, if you're interested, this workbook makes it so easy because it takes you step by step on writing down what you've done and how you're going to change it. I had a therapist, Jen Macon, help me do it. And so I just love it. I've even gone through and done it all myself. So, but to get that, until I get it on Amazon, you'd have to contact me by my email, which I'll go and give it out to your listeners. It's MaggieMay55@gmail.com. That's MaggieMaye55@gmail.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Maggie. And just listeners, just a few bits, such beautiful words of wisdom from Maggie that I need to fit in because they're so precious. Three-prong approach. If you don't take anything else from today's episode, I loved these pieces that came from Maggie's pre-podcast worksheet with me. And the first is be adaptable. Go where your child is. So in other words, meet your child at their level. That's tip 1. Tip 2, be available. Spend as much time together as possible. We're talking quality time here. And step 3, be loving. Let your child know how much you love them every day, as much as possible. And a wrap-up quote, again from Maggie: improvement, not perfection, is the goal of parenting. How'd I do, Maggie? Did I sum that up well enough?
You did great, Carla. I so appreciate you, and I love the way that I can say something and you can take it to the next level and make it reality for people to understand.
You make it easy. So thank you, Maggie, for being with us today. Such a joy and such a pleasure. I so appreciate your wisdom and for sharing your time.
Thank you, Carla.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanley.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manley wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.